Semi-Gods and Semi-Devils. Author, Jin Yong. Chapter 2 Part D. Duan Yu thought, dear goddess left this step skill, so it will no doubt be perfect and refined. If I can use it to run away when I run into a strong foe, that would be great. Then there would be no need to take the foe's life. He rolled up the scroll, clasped his hands and bowed towards it. Only then did he carefully put it in his shirt. Turning to the statue, he said, dear goddess, you have instructed me to train 3 times a day. Duan Yu dare not disobey. From this day forth I'll be sure to be extra polite and courteous to everyone I meet, then others won't come at me. Of course, then I wouldn't need to steal their inner strength. As for this minute ice ripple step, I will definitely work extra hard on it. If things do not seem right, I'm out of there, then there would be no need to steal inner strength. As for that section about kill all disciples of the carefree sect, he dared not to even think about that. Seeing that there is a door on the left, he slowly walked through it. Inside was another stone room with a stone bed. By the bed was a small wooden cradle. He stared blankly at the cradle. Could it be possible that dear goddess had a baby? No way, no way. Such a beautiful girl, how could she have a baby? Just the very thought that this graceful as a virgin dear goddess of his actually might have a baby put him on the verge of tears because of the disappointment. But his thoughts immediately turned, that's right. This is the cradle that dear goddess used when she was a baby. Her mom and dad made it for her. That carefree man and dear Chu Shui were probably her parents. Yes, that must be it. Not willing to think about this anymore and find holes in his assumption, he immediately cheered up. There were no quilts, pillows, or clothing in the room. There is only a 7-string zither hanging on a wall in this room. The strings are all broken. Left of the bed was a stone table, on which were carved a 19 by 19 square of the Go board. On the board there are about 200 or so stones. Both sides were well placed for the match. Obviously this game has not ended. Zither is here, game is not over, yet the beauty is gone. Duan Yu silently stood there in the room. Before he knew it, 2 streaks of tear ran down his cheeks. Suddenly his heart turned cold. If there is a match, then there must have been 2 people playing. Then dear goddess would most likely be that dear Chu Shui and she would be playing against her husband carefree man here. This is. I got it, this game was not played by 2 people. Dear goddess was here all by herself and play against herself out of boredom and loneliness. Dear goddess, why didn't you call out several times then? Duan Yu would have heard your voice and naturally jumped down here to play the game with you. He walked closer and looked the game over carefully. The more he looked the more surprised he became. The changes and turns in this game was incredible and complex, almost as if it is what a Go player would call a puzzle, traps within traps, and can lead to many different outcomes. Duan Yu has been working hard on the game of Go for years. Back when he was obsessed, he spent entire days playing against a Mr. Huo from accounting. He was born smart and in merely a year's time, he had turned a 4-stone handicap on himself to a 3-stone handicap on Mr. Huo. His skills are among the best in all of Dali. Yet he cannot figure out how this match would turn out. It seems like the black side has the game in hand, but there is still some chance for the whites to come back. He stared for a long time as the board got blurrier and blurrier. Seeing there is 2 candle holders on the table, each with half a candle remaining in it, he grabbed the fire knife and firestone of the tray on the candle shelf and lit the candles so he could look at the match some more. He looked and thought about the match so much that he began to feel dizzy and nauseous. He stood up and yawned. Astounded, he thought, this match is really something. Even if I take 7 or 8 more days I still may not be able to figure it out. By then my life would be gone and Miss Zhang would have long been buried alive by the Divine Farmer clan. Knowing that if he look at the table again, who knows how long it would be before he can move on again. So he turned around and reached behind him to take a hold of a candle holder so as to make sure that he does not lay another glance on the board. Suddenly excitement shot through his heart. That's right. Such a complicated game, must be a puzzle laid down by dear goddess herself and cannot be done by 2 people playing. Wonderful. He lifted his head up and saw that there is another cave entrance at the end of the stone bed. By the entrance were written, Blessed Reading Ground. Remembering what dear goddess wrote on the outside of the silk bundle, he thought, so blessed reading ground is here. Dear goddess told me that the collection of every kung fu of every sect would belong to me. I don't want to learn kung fu, so it's no big deal if I don't look through this collection, but it's an order from dear goddess, I can't disobey. so he walked through the door with the candle. Once he had the chance to look around, he immediately let out a long sigh and felt a lot better. Turns out that this blessed reading ground is a huge room, several times bigger than the room outside. Inside the room was filled with rows and rows of bookshelves, but there was not a single book on the shelves. He held up the candle and walked closer. Labels dotted the shelves, all of them saying things such as, Kunlun, Shaolin, Ching Cheng of Sichuan, Penglai of Shandong, etc. There is even a Duanzi of Dili label. But under Shaolin there was a note, missing Sutra of Changing Nerves. Under Beggar Clan was a note, missing 18 Dragon Subduing Palms, and the Duanzi of Dili was noted with, regrettably missing 1 Yangji, 6-vein Divine Sword. A long time ago these shelves were undoubtedly filled with diagrams and instructions on all of the kungfus of every sect, but someone has moved the books away a long time ago. A burden that Duan Yu has been carrying in his heart lifted as he could not be any happier. Now that the books aren't here anymore, I can't learn any of them. This doesn't count as disobeying dear goddess. But then he felt ashamed. Duan Yu, my good man, you are happy because you can't follow the instructions left by dear goddess, that is not being loyal to her. Not seeing the kung fu books, you should be sad, frustrated, and mad, not happy. Dear goddess in heaven, please forgive me. Seeing no other ways out of this blessed reading ground, he returned back to the room of the jade statue. He just barely looked at the eyes of the jade statue and became spellbound once again. He stared blankly for a long time before finally clasping his hands and bowing deeply, almost to the ground. He said, Dear goddess, I have important matters that I must attend to, so I have to temporarily leave. After I have saved Miss Zhang, then I will come back to be with you again. With great effort and struggle, he walked out of the room with a candle in hand looking for another exit. There was another flight of steps heading upwards on the side that he did not notice before, because as soon as he entered the room his attention fell onto the statue. He quickly walked to the end of the steps. There was a door that was barely large enough to fit through a head. He stuck his head out and took a look around. What he saw sent his heart racing out with fear. What he saw was fearsome rapids as water roared past him with great speed and noise, for he had came upon a river. The towering and jagged cliff stood by the bank of the river. From the looks of it he had reached the Lankang River. Excited and surprised, he slowly climbed out of the hole. Looking around him, he saw that he is more than 30 meters above the rapids. So no matter how high up the water gets, it would never reach the hole and flood the cave. But to get to the river banks is no easy task either. So he put his hands and legs to full use as he awkwardly and pathetically started climbing up. All the while he was taking care to remember all the details of his surrounding, so as to be able to return here once he finished saving lives. He thought, every year from now on, I have got to spend several months in this cave to keep dear goddess company. The banks of the river is covered by rocks, not even a small path could be found. He walked like this for about 4 kilometers when he came upon a wild peach tree. Peaches were all over this tree. He picked them and had himself a good meal. Once his stomach filled up, his spirit did as well, and he walked another 5 kilometers when he came upon a small trail. Following this trail until it was almost dusk, he finally came upon an iron chain bridge. On a rock by the bridge were carved, Welldoers Crossing. He could not be happier, for Welldoers Crossing was one of the places that he had to pass according to Zhang Ling. He has made it onto the right path. So he grabbed the iron chains for support as he stepped onto a plank of wood. This bridge is comprised of 4 iron chains. The 2 at the bottom have planks of wood laid on top to walk on, while the 2 on the side are for support. As soon as he stepped onto the bridge, the chains started to shake. When he got to the middle, the shaking got even worse. Glancing down, the river was rushing by like stampeding horses below his feet. One bad step could lead to falling into the river, then no matter how good of a swimmer you are, you would not survive. He dared not to take another look down. Staring straight ahead, he nervously and shakily began to pray, Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha. One step at a time, he finally made it to the other end. Only after sitting down and resting by the bridge for a while did he continue on as Zhang Ling had directed him. After walking quickly for more than an hour, he came upon a huge and dark forest. He knew he had arrived at the entrance of Valley of 10,000 Calamities, Zhang Ling's home. Walking up a little closer, he came upon 9 huge pine trees lined up on the left. He counted to the 4th tree from the right. Following Zhongling's direction, he went around, behind the pine tree, pulling away the tall grass, and as expected, an hole appeared before him. He thought, this valley of 10,000 calamity is really well hidden indeed. Had I not been told by Miss Zhang, who could have figured out that the entrance is actually inside a pine tree? He walked into the hole, while keeping the grass out of the way with his left hand. His right hand found a big iron ring. With a mighty pull, he lifted up the block of wood, revealing a series of steps. He walked down several steps, turned around, used both hands to gently let the wooden block fall back into place, and continued on down the steps. After 30 or so steps the path took a turn to the right, and then after several meters it turned upwards. He thought to himself, building stone steps in a place like this is not easy at all, but when compared with the steps at Dear Goddess's place, these come up way short. After about 30 steps upwards, he reached level ground. In front of him was a great field of grass, at the other end was another collection of pine trees. He walked over the field of grass and saw that one of the pines had a 3-meter-long 1-meter-wide section pared off and a layer of white paint was painted on. On it was written, "Those with the surname of Duan will die without exception." 9 of the words were black, the word die, however, was blood red. Duan Yu thought, wonder why the master of this valley hates Duans so much? Even if a guy with the surname of Duan wronged him, there are thousands of Duans in the world, is he going to kill them all? At this time the light is dark. These 10 words looked fearsome and threatening, especially that red die, for it looked as if it was written in blood. He thought some more, so this is why Miss Zhang told me not to say that my surname is Duan. She told me to bang on the 6th word 3 times, meaning banging on this Duan word. She didn't say Duan because she was afraid that I would get mad. If I have to bang on it, I'll bang on it, what's the big deal? She saved my life. Not only is it okay to bang on that Duan word 3 times, even if I have to bang Duan Yu's head 3 times I would do it. Noticing there is nail nailed on the tree with a small iron hammer hanging from it, he grabbed it and banged on that Duan word. Zheng. A loud sound of metal meeting metal came when the hammer fell. Taking Duan Yu by surprise, he was momentarily startled before realizing that behind the Duan was an iron board and behind that was hollow. Because the outside was painted white, he didn't notice it. He banged the hammer twice more and hung it back up. After a while, a young girl's voice came from behind the pine. "Miss, you are back." Her voice was full of happiness and excitement. Duan Yu replied, "I'm here because Miss Zhang asked me to come here to meet with the master of this valley." The girl let out a surprised "Yi." Then she asked, You are an outsider? Where's Miss?" Duan Yu did not see her body, but he answered, "Miss Zhang is in danger, I came here especially to report that." That girl asked anxiously, "What kind of danger?" Duan Yu answered, "She is captured and it may be life-threatening." That girl replied, You wait here for a little bit, I'm going to report to the madam." Duan Yu replied, "That would be great." He thought to himself, Miss Zhang told me to see her mother first anyway. After waiting for a while, he heard hurried footsteps come from behind the tree. The girl from before said, "Madam, request your presence." She came out from behind the tree. She was about 16 or 17 and is dressed like a servant. She spoke up again, "Honored guest. Sir, please follow me." Duan Yu asked, "How do I address you?" The servant girl shook her head, meaning that she can't talk anymore. Seeing fear on her face, Duan Yu dared not say anymore. The servant girl led him through the woods, followed a small trail toward the left, and arrived in front of a house. She pushed the door open, waved her hands at Duan Yu, and stepped to the side to let him in first. Walking in, Duan Yu noticed that he has entered a small lounge with a huge candle lit on the table in the middle of the room. Even though the room is rather small, it was very elegantly decorated. After he sat down, the servant girl came with a cup. "Sir, please try the tea. Madam will be out very soon." He took 2 sips of the tea when he noticed that there were 4 hanging scrolls on the east wall. On them were drawings of plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum, Malay and Juju. But they were hung in the order of orchid, bamboo, chrysanthemum, and plum. On the west wall was 4 scrolls of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, but their order was wrong as well, winter, summer, spring, and autumn. He mused, Miss Zhang's parents are both martial type of people. No surprise there if they don't know much about books, paintings, and things such as those. Hearing sounds of jewelry clanking, A mistress had walked out from the back. She was wearing a silk shirt that was of a light green color and looked about 36 or 37 years old. Seeing that her face was pretty and delicate with a faint resemblance of Zhongling between her eyebrows, Duanyu knew that this was Madame Zhang. So he stood up, clasped his hands, and bowed. Humbled Wanyu respectfully salutes to Madame. As soon as he said it he grimaced. "Oh. Why did you blurt out your real name?" I was concentrating entirely on how much she looked like Zhongling and completely forgot about making up a fake name. Madame Zhang was a bit taken aback, but she bowed in return nevertheless. "Many fortunes to you." She followed with, "You. Your surname is Duan?" There was surprise in her expression. Duanyu figured that since he had already blurted out his own name, it is too late to lie about that. So he replied, "Yes, my humble surname is Duan." Madame Zhang continued with her questions. "Don't know where your hometown is or what your father is known as?" Duanyu thought, got to tell two big lies here, or else she might guess who I am. So he replied, "I am from the city of Linan in Henan province. My father's given name is Long." There were some traces of suspicion on Madame Zhang's face. "But you are speaking in the Dili dialect." Duanyu replied, "I moved to Dili 3 years ago and learned the local dialect. I'm afraid it is not very good, please excuse my bad accents." Madame Zhang took a deep breath and replied, "Very convincing dialect, not the least bit different from the locals. Please sit down." The two of them sat down. Miss Zhang kept on looking up and down non-stop, sizing him up. All this attention made Duanyu very uncomfortable, so he spoke up, "I ran into some troubles on the way here, causing my clothing to get torn. Your daughter is in danger, that is why I came here. Only that the news was very urgent, so I had no chance to switch into something more clean and appropriate. Please forgive my rudeness." Madame Zhang seemed to have suddenly been snapped out of a trance by his words. She anxiously asked, "What's happened to my daughter?" Duanyu took out the pair of shoes from his shirt and said, "Miss Zhang told me to come here with these as proof and see you." Madame Zhang took the shoes over into her hand and replied, "Thank you so much. Don't know what kind of trouble my daughter has run into?" So Duanyu told her everything that has happened from Sword Lake Palace to now, leaving out only the section regarding Dear Goddess. Madame Zhang was quiet the entire time, but her face got darker and darker. When Duanyu finished, she sighed and said, "As soon as she leaves the house she runs into trouble." Duanyu replied, "All of this started because of me. Miss Zhang has no fault in this matter.